All right, everybody, welcome to this bonus episode of Battleships to Beer, 10 years of Mare Island Brewing Company. And today I'm actually sitting at the Admiral's mansion here on Mare Island. It's the Mare Island Historical Park Foundation location. And it's actually, I think, one of the first Admiral mansions that was built here. And I think that every Admiral on Mare Island had this as their home during their tenure. And I'm actually super stoked about this one because joining me is a friend of the company and Mare Island, Steve Taugner. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. So Kent and I have known Steve, his wife Sue, and one of his kids, Josh, for, I guess, ever since we started building out the brewery. And, one of the things, Steve's actually the owner of Full Service Electric here on Mare Island. And how long have you had Full Service here?
We incorporated in Full Service Electric in 2009, actually. So it's been coming up 15 years.
15 years. So you got 5 years on us, and you know a little bit more just in that time period. But one of the things I just kind of wanted to do is just figure out. I've never asked you, where did you grow up? Like, where are you from?
I'm from Minnesota. We actually came over from Austria. My folks did. And we grew up in, I grew up in Minnesota. I came out here on the Richard B. Russell, a submarine, and I met my wife, and she wouldn't go back, so here's where we ended up.
So Sue's actually from out here?
Sue's from here,
She's a native Valayan, huh? Or
not really. She was born over in North Carolina, I believe, but she was here since she was, young.
Gotcha. So one of the things I just want, when's the first time that you became aware of Mare Island? Because my understanding is you have a long history beyond Full Service here, and that's kind of what I want to dig in a little bit. But when was the first time you became aware of Mare Island?
I went into the Navy in 1984 and went through my A schools and sub school. And then I came around from Groton, Connecticut with the Richard B. Russell in 1984 is when I got to. I've been here since 1984.
Well, one, thank you for your service in the Navy. Two, did you choose to be in a submarine? Are you one of the crazy ones that said you wanted to do it, or how did that come about?
Yeah, they offered me all kinds of stuff, but I couldn't fly because back then you had to have your visions. I wanted to fly the Harriers. But submarines was my second choice. And then I qualified high enough and my scores were good enough that I qualified for the Russell, which is a spec boat, special boat. So
awesome. So how long were you in the Navy for?
I was only in the Navy for 4 years.
Okay.
4 years, yeah.
And so 84 to 88, I mean, that was at the height of the Cold War, I would say.
Correct. That was when the Russell and the Parchie and the Seawolf were just getting going in the spec ops realm.
Yeah.
We were all getting outfitted, and all the boats were being cut apart and reassembled to support what we were doing.
Gotcha. So I guess one of the things I want to know is, are you able to talk about some of the things that you were doing at the time? Because that I didn't know some of the stories, and Kent's kind of given me some of the conversations you guys have had, and that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to have you on a bonus episode. But is there some things that you can talk about?
I can talk about just about everything. And what freed that up is back when we were doing it, late when we were doing it, the walkers were, and like I was saying earlier, I don't remember if they were on the Vincent or the Enterprise. They were on one of the aircraft carriers, and they were selling secrets to the Russians because this was the whole Cold War, and we were all worried about nuclear war and so on and so forth. But when that happened, one of the senators spilled the beans on the whole program we were doing to an author who wrote a book, and it's called Blind Man's Bluff, and I'm sure you can still get it on Amazon. And it went down and exposed a lot of what we were doing. Yeah. And once it was exposed, the government came in and they grabbed all the books and shut the whole project down. And then we were able to do just only a couple more after that, and then the whole program was scrapped.
Gotcha. Well, let's back up a little bit here because this is intense and exciting. So we make a beer called Ivy Bells, which we learned that name through that book, Blind Man's Bluff, because apparently this program one of the names was called Ivy Bells. And when we made our Pilsner, it's a cold lagered beer, and this was during the Cold War, and so we just felt like, one, it's a fascinating story, but that the name fit well with the story. And just kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea was that these missions started from Mare Island, out of the Pink Palace. I think they concocted these over there.
Well, there was the Pink Palace. The Pink Palace was more the machinery side of it, and then we had our own building, OE, Ocean Engineering Building, down by the Coast Guard, the old Coast Guard, where you can't get anymore.
Gotcha.
There was a building down there for us.
Gotcha. And so this whole thing, was it Nimitz that had postulated about this cable crossing from Moscow to St. Petersburg in the Sea of Osk, and he put together this, I guess, or got the team together to put together these submarines and release out divers to put a listening device over this cable. Is that a good summation so far of?
It's fairly accurate. I don't know if it was Nimitz, but I know it was a whole team.
Yeah.
It was a whole team of people that got together, and the hardest part was how to retrofit the submarines, because the submarines were already built.
Right.
And so, like the Parchi, cut it in half, it added 100 feet in the middle of it.
Wow.
Stretched out by 100 feet. And the Russell rebuilt the whole bottom half of it so we could sit on the bottom and release our divers and do what we did. And the Seawolf had other enhancements as well. There were only 3 boats that did it.
Gotcha.
But as far as going up, and we just called it the Sea of O because none of us could pronounce it back then. Yeah, we went up there and we did what we did, but that was what the whole program was for.
Yeah, so you came over here on the Russell, you were saying, and so that was one of the ships, and obviously you scored high enough. Like, did you know what was going on during these? Like, how were you ranked in knowing this? Because I mean, it was the height of the Cold War, and this was something that you didn't talk about.
No, we signed our life away as far as talking about it. But what happened was I came out in 1984, and the boat was just getting cut apart and retrofitted. And when I got here, basically the entire crew that was on the boat and came around before the retrofit left because they weren't cleared for what we were doing. So I was assigned to the boat, and I was literally the most senior person on the boat as far as being on the boat time-wise, which in the submarine forces is almost as important as rank-wise.
Okay.
Because of the whole thing. The crews, the crews did not know anything about the mission.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing about the mission. There were probably 10 people on the boat that actually understood and knew what the mission was. And because everything's compartmentalized in the military. So Joe average crew member didn't know anything at all about it.
Gotcha.
The people who knew about it were obviously the navigators. We had to get where we were going. The upper engineers, and I was an ice seaman, and we monitored and did a lot with the atmosphere and interfaced with the actual divers. And so we knew what was going on. And there were parts of the boat that the crew couldn't even go to on their own boat.
Wow.
So that was how it all started, and it was interesting, but not many people knew about it.
Yeah, so you were saying about 10 of
it.
you guys, and like how many on a crew of one of those submarines? Like, what was the total number of crew on a submarine to operate it?
But we were extremely top heavy for obvious reasons. Top heavy meaning more officers than a normal boat has. And so, I don't know, depending on the mission and the duration would depend on the number of crews, but it could be, I don't know, easily be 130 people.
Okay, so I mean less than about 8% of the.
Yeah, I would say the majority of the officers knew, and probably half a dozen of the crew knew.
Okay. So you guys would leave from Mare Island and head towards Russia. How long does that journey take in a submarine to get over there? Like how?
Well, what happens is when you're getting ready to go out on a deployment or whatever, on a mission or whatever you want to call it, there's things that you have to avoid, and you've got to bob and weave and go around there. Like if you've got war games out in the Atlantic or wherever, you can't be anywhere there because you have to be totally invisible. And so there were times we'd take side trips and just sit there for 3, 4, 5 days until we could go where we ended up going, because we had to go literally below the Russian Navy to get into where we were going. I mean, literally underneath their boats.
Wow.
And so there were issues with that. And so to get on site, I don't know, there were times it took us, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get on site. And then there were times it took almost half that long.
Gotcha.
So it all depends on what happens during transit.
Right. And then once you got to the location where you guys needed to deploy these divers, like how long did that part of the mission? Because I got to imagine that was the most tense part of the deployment.
Yes. Well, we would go in and we'd go underneath, where underneath the other ships and the Navy and so on and so forth. And we would go upstream a little bit more than that and sit down. So we weren't active directly underneath them, but we were active not far from them. So everybody would go into their racks and it was quiet, and while they're doing it for, I don't know, I think the longest we were out was 107 days.
Wow.
So, for a pretty fair amount of time. And you go out there and you'd tap into the lines and do what you do and record for as long as you could, and then hightail it out.
So you wouldn't leave a device there. You guys would, it was just while you were there, hang out for as long as you could, get the device, and then head back home here. Yeah.
The thing that you don't realize is the amount of food. So you go out there until you run out of food.
Gotcha.
That's kind of how it works. And every square inch of the sub when you go on deployment is packed full of food. I mean, all your hallways, you're on number 10 cans, you're walking on top of cans, you got literally bags of nuts stuffed in the corners, and everything you can do to make your stay out as long as possible. Because without that, that's the factor.
Right.
You've got to have food.
Right.
And since we weren't allowed to pull into any foreign ports for obvious reasons.
Sure.
You had to not only be able to get there, stay on station as long as you could, but you also had to get back. And there were times that, bad things happened, and, we'd have to come in under tarps and so on and so forth, because, the Russians knew, they caught one of us. And so there was depth charges and stuff like that. So it was the real deal, only during the Cold War.
Right. Right. So, what was your mindset like going over and doing that? Because again, like you said, the average Joe, crew member didn't know what was going on, but you knew, and you knew where you were going. Clearly not into friendly territory. No. Clearly not during a friendly time.
No, and as you go along and you're out there on station, everybody's wondering, what are we doing, so on and so forth, because they aren't interacting with the divers. They're not interacting with us up in control because they can't see where we're going. They don't know. And so that's one of the biggest problems, is then the rumor mill starts. And the rumors are absolutely hilarious, some of them, when you know what's going on. But I don't stress about that type of stuff. So it didn't affect me at all, literally at all. I enjoy that type of stuff. But we had people that had to be sedated because they wigged out. We had people that had to be sedated, and we had people that got hurt, and so we had to go and deal with that type of stuff. But yeah, it didn't bother me at all.
You mentioned some rumors. What would be like a hilarious rumor that somebody would think you guys were doing?
Oh gosh, the rumor mill was working overtime. And I mean, I heard everything from we're just out on patrol, and we're patrolling outside of Europe, and we're in the Middle East, and this and that, and no.
Just had no idea which
Zero,
direction you're going.
No idea, and it wasn't until the book came out, I don't think, that that people really say, "Oh, okay, I get it."
That's what I was doing.
That's exactly where we were and what we were doing.
What kind of like defenses did you guys have on the submarine? So you said one of the boats got hit with depth charges and clearly got and were found. Like what were the defenses you guys could do if, let's say, for instance, it escalated?
Oh, I mean, we would just literally destroy everything.
Right.
I mean, we carried torpedoes, but we didn't ever use them. They were the absolute last ditch method, but everything would have been destroyed.
Suicide mission is what you're saying?
Well, something along those lines.
Gotcha.
But everything would have been destroyed had we actually been captured. Everything would have been wiped out. Yeah.
Wow. So how many of those deployments were you actually on, and did you do?
That's a good question. I don't remember. A lot of it was sea trials and so on and so forth, because remember, we just literally cut a submarine open and redid everything in the thing. So I think in 1987, I only had like 2 weeks in port or something. I don't remember. So
wow.
We spent a lot of time out getting all our systems working, because now you've got a whole lot more systems that you got to deal with. And it's something that's never been done before. So you're going out and you're doing this, and while you're doing this, it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. Now we need to change it, and we need to do this, we need to modify that. And I think I went on 2 deployments.
Gotcha. One of my favorite parts about Blind Man's Bluff. Have you read the book? I'm assuming. Or
you know what? I don't watch submarine movies either. I look at it and it's like, oh, that ain't right. So no, I haven't read it cover to cover. I paged through it.
Sure. My favorite part is just the opening scene, where it's a sailor who is drunk off his ass, is in the bar, the Horse and Cow, which I want to ask you about a little bit as well. And he is on the payphone calling the White House, and the switch operator is answering it, and he's trying to get a hold of the president at the time to tell him how proud he was to be on this mission and how he thought it was an important thing to do. And apparently the switch operator got a hold of the MPs, called Mare Island, and said, you need to get your ass to the Horse and Cow, because this guy's over there about to blow the whole mission. Like,
yeah, stuff like that, and man, we consume more than our share of alcohol, certainly. But the nice thing is we were the untouchables during that time period. Anything and everything we wanted, we got. It was just a blank check, because we were the only ones literally doing this type of stuff.
Right.
And like one time we came in on a way back from a mission, way back from deployment, and they were doing war games out of Pearl Harbor. So we couldn't be seen because we had special things on the boat and so on and so forth. And so we actually pulled into Maui. We pulled into Lahaina back when there was just a one hotel town. It was just literally one hotel town. And we pulled in, and we'd been underway, and so after you've been underway, it's like one drink and you're drunk.
Right.
And the guys went in, and they went to that hotel and literally destroyed the entire hotel. I mean, just destroyed it. There wasn't anything left of it, just a big free-for-all. letting go of all the stress and everything. And so at the end of that period, we all said, so now we're going to get our ass chewed by the captain, and so on and so forth. And the captain just basically wrote a check for the whole new hotel, and we went on our way. And never even said boo to any of the people on the boat. It was just, you know, we were the untouchables.
It was that important.
Yeah, we were just. That was a lot. It was interesting times.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to back up to the Horse and Cow. So
Jimmy's place.
What's that?
Jimmy's place.
Jimmy's place.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's the what's it called now? Gosh, Gentleman Jim's.
Yeah, that used to be next door. But
Yeah.
They moved to when Jimmy went down to San Diego. They moved over into his building.
Yeah. And so the stories out of there that I've heard are just, you know, the debauchery beyond debauchery, you know, I don't know, like thinking of like Porky's Revenge or, you know, all of that.
And it was way worse than that.
Way worse than that.
Way worse than that. Oh yeah, that was the place where everybody went to blow off steam, and everything was fair game. Everything was fair game in that place.
Because, I mean, there's the stories of, you know, if you earned your dolphins, which, by the way, what does that mean when you earn your dolphins?
Well, in the Navy, when you're on a boat, you have to qualify. I don't know if the skimmers are the same, surface boats, but on the submarines, we had to learn every system on the boat, because the lowest person on the submarine is just as important as the captain is when shit gets real, whether you got a fire, you got flooding or whatever. So everybody needs to know how to do everybody else's job. So when you get your dolphins, that means you have learned all the other systems, and you're a valuable member of the crew at that point. Until you earn your dolphins, you're just a POS like everybody else. But once you earn your dolphins, then that's a whole different level of respect. And the lowest person of rank on the boat, once he has his dolphins, is more important than the highest officer on the boat who doesn't have his dolphins. It's that big of a deal. So
Wow.
Dolphins, yeah. When you earn your dolphins,
And so how would you earn your dolphins at the Horse and Cow? Like, because I've
you
heard
have
different
to,
ways.
Well, there's a million different stories, but usually it's a pitcher. They put the dolphins in the bottom of the pitcher and put anything that they can find, from sawdust off of the floor to whiskey to beer to everything in this pitcher, and you've got to drink your dolphins. You can drink that pitcher throughout the night to get to the bottom for your dolphins.
And that's the final test for you to earn it.
Yeah, that's your final test. That's how you get your dolphins.
You've learned every valve and system on the boat, but that
Correct.
doesn't get them for you. Maybe on paper, but not
on paper, but not with the crew.
Did you enjoy it? I don't know. That sounds like
Getting your dolphins?
No, just this whole time and period. I mean, it seems even you were. I mean, how old were you at the time? Not to try to
I was
expose you. However
24 to like 28.
I mean, that's exciting times.
Yeah, I would never have gotten out had it not been for marriage and a house payment, and I had 2 kids.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't have. I'd have stayed in. It was a blast, but it all went downhill, because remember when I was in and doing it, we were the untouchables. I'd use that as, and whatever. I mean, we got in trouble, and you know the repercussions were just minimal because of what we did. But after the program got scrapped, and they decommed the boats because they weren't good for anything other than
because you guys cut them up and specialized them.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
this mission.
So they weren't up for that. So once the program got scrapped, because my little brother went in and he says it's terrible. It's not at all like, you know, because he went into the regular Navy, and you know there's no perks, and you know there's all kinds of stuff. Whereas us, we look like hippies out on the boat wearing coveralls. You know, we just didn't play by the regular rules.
Right.
And so I don't think I would have liked going that way, but I loved it while we were doing what we were doing. I loved it. We had so much fun.
I bet. I mean,
you know, it was good times.
Yeah. What I appreciate you telling me. I like I said, I knew a little bit about it, but there's another thing that Ken had said, something about the Golden Gate Bridge when you guys were going under the Golden Gate Bridge.
Because our boat had. Well, that was a thing that and as I understand it, I didn't talk to because there was an actual Senate committee and oversight committee and everything for what we did, right?
Sure.
And they wanted photos and so on and so forth for whatever they were doing. And when we were going underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, we had an appendage on our boat that boats didn't have. And so we would go under there and we'd put it off as this, that, or the other thing. But if you look at the last photo shoot they took of the boat when we were leaving on one of our deployments, and we're going underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. If you look at the Golden Gate Bridge, there isn't a soul on the Golden Gate Bridge because all of that was all cleared out so we could do this stupid photo op to satisfy some bean counter in the
Right.
in the Senate. But yeah, it was funny. I still got that photo somewhere. Maybe I showed it to Kent or something.
That would be, if you ever found it, it'd be great to put it on the as far as the assets for this bonus episode. Curious, do you still keep in contact with any of the crew that you went out with at all, or?
I don't. I don't intentionally keep contact with anybody, even from high school or whatever. But I run across them every now and again. They'll call me every now and again to see how things are going. But I've got such a busy life right now. I just don't have time to.
Indeed.
Maybe when I retire or something. But.
Well, let's bring it to modern day, just because you've basically been on or around Mare Island since '84, in essence, is what it seems, and
yeah.
So 40 years at this point. And what do you think is your impression of Mare Island now, like as far as the future, where we're headed, kind of what's going on, like how are you feeling about the current?
You know what? I've been here a long time, and I was here at the absolute height of Mare Island. I mean, we had our own rush hour and everything, and then when it closed down in '96, it was a ghost town, and it was a free-for-all, and everything got stolen and broken into, and it was absolutely horrible times for the island. And I want to say, God, what year did Lennar come in? I want to say 2006. And I might be off by a year or two,
Sure.
But Lennar got it on a $1 deal from the Navy in 2006. I'm pretty sure it was 2006. And then they started organizing it and doing good things to help stave off some of the vandalism and the thievery and everything. And no matter what people say, I think Lennar did a pretty good job for not being in their wheelhouse.
I agree.
So I think I was one of the only ones that really never had an issue with Lennar. A lot of people didn't get it, didn't like them, but so they started bringing it up, and then the Nimitz Group and Mare Island Company, and then I don't know. I guess it was just those two. They're trying to bring it back, but it's such a high monetary drain that I think it's going slower than everybody anticipated.
Yeah, for sure.
But I like the direction it's heading as far as the development goes, but I can't stand the way the world is right now with all the thievery and all that other stuff. So we have our internal issues with people stealing stuff out here, and it's gotten real bad, but I don't think that's a Nimitz or a Mare Island Company issue.
Right.
I think that's just the way the society has gotten.
Right.
But I love the general plan. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime as slow as it's going, but I like where it's going. I'd love to see it back to full capacity again.
I'm glad that you kind of share what Kent and I have always said is, a lot of the people that when we first started, they bagged on Lennar and basically said, they're not doing anything, they've got it for a steal for $1. And we've always been on the defensive and said, yeah, but you don't understand the $130 million they put into the cleanup to try to get it to be a viable island, and at least somebody had a plan and a direction. If the city of Vallejo was going through bankruptcy, they couldn't have done a damn thing with this thing at all. Of course, Lennar being a home builder, they had their objectives of a developer, and they put the development over here, but they preserved a lot of the historical integrity of what this place did, what you guys did here. And I think that is something that, like Tom Sheaf and his crew, just never got the proper kudos for, whichever way you thought about it. They at least put it in a direction of preservation, that what we're trying to do with the brewery and with the brand, and let people know what went on here. I don't think it would have gotten on that path unless somebody like a Lennar, saw that vision. So
I agree. I think that now Lennar definitely had its downside and its faults. In the early days, they would let somebody clean out one building and then use the money from the scrap from one building to finance building something else, and so they had some ethical problems in my mind. But for the most part, everybody bags on Lennar, but now I'm talking to the old timers that have been around a long time, and they say, at this point we'd almost welcome Lennar back,
right?
Because Lennar had a constant supply of money to put into it because of all their housing developments. This was their stepchild, and they kept funneling money into it, but hundreds of millions of dollars they put into this
They're
place.
a Fortune 500 company. It's one of those things, dancing with the devil versus the devil you don't, in essence on that. One of the questions we get asked all the time is like, what else is going on Mare Island? Like, we pass by it, we see the signs, people don't know about it. I'm like, there's over 100 active businesses on the island right now that are, we love that we can get anything done that we need on Mare Island. If you need a welder, there's a shop still doing a welder. If you need cabinets, you can go to Western Dovetail and talk to Max and Josh over there. You need an electrician, Full Service has got your back on that. And so one thing I do notice is that your guys' trucks are damn near at every business at some point of the week on here. So I think if anybody knows more about the businesses on Mare Island, it's probably Full Service Electric. But
could be. We're everywhere.
Like how many businesses are you aware of on the island?
Oh, I wouldn't even venture to count. I know we do pretty much all of them. There's only one or two that don't do much electrical, and so we don't have little to do with it. Of course we do all of Mare Island Company stuff, and
right.
and all the big businesses. We do have businesses that are getting ready to turn over. Now that the Lucas Museum has been done with Chrysler,
right?
So they're wrapping up and cleaning up, and so that building will be available, but for the most part, it's not huge businesses,
right?
And it's just been a great thing. Like you say, no matter what you want, you can get it on the island, and that's a beautiful thing.
It is, and it's it's island living. It pretty much is island living. Not like you guys tearing it up in Maui, island living, but we've had our times, and I still think, and what I always say is, Mare Island is the reason that Vallejo was great in the past. It's the reason it went to shit, because once the Navy left and we went through bankruptcy. And I still feel Mare Island is kind of the center of why Vallejo can be great again, because it's just such a unique piece of property in the Bay Area and a good amount of history. And there's just a lot of latent pride still in Mare Island that, no pun intended, that still needs to be tapped into and appreciated.
I agree. I don't know what it is about this island. Like I said, I've been here a long time, but I just love this island. I love the whole history of everything, and it's still got a lot. It's still got some secrets.
Sure.
I know a lot of them, but it's still got some secrets. I just love this island.
I got one I wanted to ask just because, and if you can't, I totally understand. But I know one of the rumors that I love hearing is that there were underground submarine tunnels or whatever on the island. Does that have any weight to it?
No, there was no submarine tunnels under the island, but we did have our own cisterns and so on and so forth, and our own tunnels. There's still tunnels under the island.
Right.
Like if you go into the bottom of Dry Dock 2, and you take those grates out that you see in the bottom, you rappel down, and you can get into the tunnels where all the pumps and stuff are. But those are the only tunnels that are left.
Gotcha. I was really hoping for something good.
No.
Yeah.
No. And the tunnels that were found, like when they did the brewery or the distillery, those were saltwater tunnels because all of our fire suppression system used to be saltwater because we could take it right out of the thing. Well, then all we needed was electricity, and we could pump it through those tunnels, and we could use it to fight fires. And this is back, a long time ago when we still had our reservoir on top of the hill, where the golf course is. But we don't have any submarine tunnels.
Gotcha. Well, so Steve is actually one of our tank honorees, and it was an absolute pleasure to. A matter of fact, I think we're brewing into the Taugner today.
Awesome.
But we talk about the Taugner at least in production all the time. So your name is never forgotten, and I love when Josh came over there to take a picture, and I said that's your dad's name. I said he gave it to you, but that's Steve's tank, and you've got a really great employee and friend, Jake, that he's actually got a tank named after him, one of our little 1-barrel tanks.
Oh, that's awesome.
His nickname is Short Round.
Yeah.
He's a short guy, but just a fantastic individual, and he's got a tank named after him. But all I can say is, it's been awesome to have you guys as part of the Mare Island Brewing Company family. But even when we were building out the brewery, I've told the story about how we hollowed out the one coal shed down there, and where I think it was JBL used to be, and we had our little think tank sessions where like you, Nagy, Crowder, me, Bailey, we would all after the end of the day, I'd get a text like, "What are you doing? Are you down at the brewery?" Like, "Yeah, let's meet over at that coal shed and bring down some beer." And
the Cool Kids Club.
Yeah, the Cool Kids Club. You'd bring a little whistle pig and and tell some of these stories. So I just got to say, Steve, thank you so much for sitting down and sharing that story, and also thank you for what you've done to the brewery and for the brewery. And we just look forward to having you around and keeping on and doing great things on the island. So thank you so much, and thanks for sharing this with us today.
Thank you so much, you guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and hopefully more to come. Thank you so much.